Good morning for those of us in California. It's smoky here. I hope you have some good breathing air around you. Good afternoon and good evening to our friends in Europe. And thank you for Ars Electronica hosting Telluric Vibrations. I'm Victoria Vesna. I'm the director of the ArtSci Center. And I have been working with Debra for a while now. First as a student, it feels like ages ago. And more recently with the project Alien Stardust, she literally saved us because we had this idea to create dust and dust particles, and Eli Jateva was working with me, and she said, "Oh, I wish I knew Houdini because that would be the software that could do this." And at that point, Debra writes me an email. I started a school with Houdini, and I would like to teach if you know of anything. I was like, actually. And it became this really amazing, great project. Actually, we're setting up, as I'm speaking to you, to do a performance in an hour. So I will be dropping out at one point, but Caitlin Bryson, who's our ArtSci Collective member and assistant in the center, doing amazing work herself, knows Debra, and she'll engage her in a dialogue. And everybody who joined, whether now or in the future, you're in for a treat because she's an excellent teacher. And she really has expanded our view of particle systems and beautiful animations, and most of all, patience. So with that, welcome, Debra.
Thank you so much, Victoria. This project was really interesting, and it was wonderful working with you, and thank you for your patience. I know that took a lot on your part as well. So yeah, my name's Debra Isaac. I also teach at Drexel University, and I'm also the founder of Houdini School, which is going to be launching very soon. This is totally live. I'm going to be doing a demo live, so anything could happen, things could crash. Also, I can answer any questions live, so please, be interactive. Let's have some fun. I'm going to share my screen now. So today what we're going to do is fracture just any object, right? And then we're going to talk about creating a particle system. Also, really quickly, please go to sideeffects.com and explore all that there is to offer. You can also download, go to Get Download, and just simply download the software. The free personal learning edition has everything you need to learn, and it's super powerful and flexible, as you're going to see. So here's what we're going to end up with today. Okay. So let's get started. I'm going to open up an empty file. This just has my lighting set up and a simple backdrop. And what you're going to see when you first start working in Houdini, once you bring it up, typically what you have are 3 panes. So I'm going to assume that you're just opening up Houdini for the first time. I'm not going to give like a super intro lecture, but just a couple things you need to know, which is this pane right here. This is your scene view. This is where all the 3D viewing is going to happen. And what you do is you hold down the space bar, and with the left mouse button, you can tumble. With the middle one, you can pan. And with the right one, you can zoom. On the right bottom is your network view. And these are where all your nodes live. And as you can see, as I select these different nodes, we have different parameters that come up. So these are your parameters view up here. So I'm just going to go ahead, and what I like to do is cancel out these panes right here, these little tiny little X's right here, right? And now I just have 2 panes. So when I want to see my parameters, I just hit P. So it's a nice little shortcut. So just keep that in mind. That way I get to maximize all my real estate on the right-hand side with my nodes. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to need to know today is the fact that Houdini is unique in the fact that you can go in and out of these main kind of container objects and actual geometry. So for example, I'm going to hit the tab menu. So we'll be using the tab the entire time. So you just hit tab and we're just going to type geo. Okay, you hit the geo and we have our first object. This is a container object and we can name this. We're going to name this octahedron. And then we can just go inside by double clicking or hitting enter. And there's nothing inside. I'm going to press tab again. So it's an empty geo container. Press tab again. And then I'm going to type platonic. Really, you only need to type the first 3 letters and then you select the object that you want. So this is a platonic solid. If I hit P, I can then select the object that I want. And I'm going to rise it up a bit. I'm going to type 1.8 in the center of Y. Okay. I'm going to put my second node down and we're going to get right away into the fracture. And it's called RBD. And you notice there's a lot of RBD nodes. RBD stands for rigid body dynamics. So what I'm looking for is an RBD material fracture. And I'm just going to select, I'm just going to wire these nodes together. Now, I'm not seeing anything. Why? And you'll notice that we have these things called flags. And you will not see anything unless your flag is in the right spot, which is the next node. So I need to put my display flag on the node that I want to see. And right away, you can see that I actually have a fracture. Now, before we get into these parameters, there are many, many parameters in this node. So it's a bit of an expensive node. It's a tool, really. And we're going to visualize how this looks exploded. So I know that the next node I want is called exploded view. So I'm going to say RBD exploded view is the next node I want. And again, I'm just going to select those, and I won't see anything until I put my display flag on this RBD exploded view. Now, what's also fun is that I can visualize this. So I can say pieces, and all of a sudden I can visualize all my fractured pieces in different colors. Now we can go back to the RBD material fracture and have a little more latitude in terms of what we can see. You can always, again, you can notice that my display flag is on one node, but I'm selecting another node. That allows me to change the parameters on one node while viewing another one. So I can take this uniform scale out, take it in to see, to just, get a little more breathing room. Now, on your own, I encourage you to explore these options more. Scatter points, if you increase this, you're going to have a lot more fractures. You can add more layers to your fracture. You can simulate glass, wood, and other types of materials. You can add some chipping, which is really interesting. What I'm just going to do today is add a little detail, which means I would like to see some interior detail. Okay, so right away I can see that it added some interior detail. I can change my shading mode to see the topology there. And if I wanted to, I can increase the resolution by turning the detail size down. I'm not going to do that because I want to keep this demo nice and fast. The other interesting part is you see how all my edges are still straight while the interior detail is quite noisy. I'm going to add some edge detail, and what that's going to do is give me noisy edges. And you can see down here the calculations, it's cooking when you see what it's doing down at the bottom. Okay, so now my edges are not so straight. Okay, and then as you can see again with my exploded view, I'll bring it back and everything still fits perfectly together, right? Okay, so I can go ahead and turn back my visualize to none, so I'm back with no colors. And what I want to do is animate. You know, I'm going to go through this whole entire demo without laying a single keyframe down. Okay, nothing, no offense to keyframes, but I like to use them seldomly. You know, they get quite complicated. You can set a keyframe anywhere in Houdini. All you hit is Alt and click on a parameter to set a keyframe. But I'm actually going to use expressions today. So what you can do here, right now you can see that the uniform scale starts at 0. And you can increase that value and it will just keep exploding out, exploding out. Okay, so what do we know? We know we want to start at 0. So there's a really interesting way to just get really quick animation. And I can say at uppercase F frame. And what this does, if I just click on the word uniform scale, it'll tell me that what it's doing is it's looking up the frame number and putting that value in the parameter here. So as you can see, 3, I'm on frame 3, uniform scale is 3. I'm on frame 4, uniform scale is 4. So it's just looking that up, right? But I want to start at 0, right? So what do I have to do here? I just -1, right? And then I'm back at 0. So let's play this, you know, and it's going a little fast. So how do we slow it down? Well, if I put this in parentheses and times it by, let's say, 0.1, I can slow it down. Okay, so let's say we're happy with this level of exploding out. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is just throw on some simple materials. I'm going to use this plus sign. I'm going to magnify this. It's quite small. It's this little plus sign right here. And I'm going to say material palette. And I already had these here, so let me delete these so I can show you how I did that. All I did is I've got a gold metallic right here. I'm just going to drag that over here. Some coated metal paint. I want some of that. And I just want the generic principal shader as well. So I dragged all those. So you see the little Disney icon. The shader was actually developed at Disney. Side Effects has a history of incorporating large studio tools into their software. Also, if I go to the matte context, so now if you look here, so far we've been in the OBJ context. If you go to the matte context, this is actually where our materials landed. Okay, these are our shaders. The gold we're going to use as is, okay? The coated metal paint, I actually want a black color for that. I'm going to change that base color there. And our principal shader always starts with the middle gray. I'm actually going to change that to white. So we're going to use point color, and our principal shader will inherit that if we just leave it at white. Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted to do. That was all in this material context where all of our shaders live. Let's go back to our OBJ context. So if I select this, I can press I to go in or double click to go in. And now it's time to apply our materials. Tab, material. And what's interesting is that if I press this I for information, it comes with a whole bunch of groups that are quite useful. We have an inside group and an outside group. So what I can do is I can say, okay, well, I'm going to apply my gold material to the outside group. And then I'm going to press this plus sign right here. And for the inside group, I'm going to apply the coated metal paint, that black. And right away, we can test it out. So we can see that I have this black material. Now, I have also a dark background. And if you want to have that too, you just hit D, background, and then you can change it. The default is this light background. And I've got a dark background. Okay. So that's pretty much the end of the demo for this part of it. And now we're going to get into particles. But you can see just with a couple nodes, we can create some pretty interesting stuff. But you could pretty much spend hours in this node, though. So please have fun with that. I'm going to go back up. You can see where my mouse is. You can press a U to go back up. And this again is where all of your objects live, all your lights, all your cameras, all your container objects are all in this object level. You see where my mouse is, it says objects. Another clue that you get here is now it says geometry. Always look at the top right corner to see where you're at, see what context you're in. Okay, now let's have some fun with particles. So again, I'm going to press Tab, Geo, empty geometry container, and name this guy particles. Also, if you're into colors, you can press C, or this icon right here. C toggles on your colors, and you can color your nodes. You can also make sticky notes. When you're learning, feel free to make notes and color them as well. So okay, this note refers to this node, for example. And you can compress those as well. Okay, so let's go inside of our particles. Now, before we can make our particles, we need to create a source for our particles. Sourcing is really important for dynamics. The better the source, the better your simulation is going to be. So I'm just simply going to create a grid. And I'm going to make the size quite small, 0.8 and 0.8. We have something called a value ladder. So if you middle mouse, right and left, you can scale this up and down. I'm also going to raise this, and I can use handles. You can see also that if I use handles, I can also adjust my parameter. Okay, so something like 2 over here. Let's check this out. So this is our topology here, the rows and the columns. I want to go all the way to 50 and 50. I'm going to need as much topology as I can get. I can increase it even more, but I think this should be sufficient. Tab mountain. We use this mountain node quite a bit and other noise functions, as you'll see in the next performance with Victoria Vesna. We made meteors, and everything was very rocky. So this is a really quick way to get a rocky formation, a rocky topology. And again, I can animate this, right? So if I say at frame at uppercase F frame, press play, it's just kind of going nuts, right? So let's times it by 0.1, see if that slows it down. And you can keep slowing it down. Maybe 0.01. There we go. Okay, so we want to have, we're trying to get something very breath-like, something undulating. Okay, so ultimately what we're going to do is scatter. So scatter is a very common node. And all we're doing is putting a point cloud on a piece of geometry. And you can put this on anything, on any geo, right? And it will put points on your geo. We'll turn it into a point cloud. But what's neat is we could actually control the density. So we can make certain parts more dense and certain parts less dense. You control the distribution with an attribute called density. We're going to turn this on in a second. And in Houdini, we deal with attributes. And this is also kind of a new thing that you don't usually use in other 3D packages, but it's crucial in Houdini. And once you learn about how to manipulate with attributes, you will definitely feel more masterful over the software. So we want to control the distribution with an attribute. And this is an attribute that the scatter SOP expects. It's called density. Okay, so let's use a node. I'm going to type attribute, and you can see there's tons of attribute SOPs. SOPs is another name for a node. Attribute noise. Okay, again, noises. We use noises a lot. We'll first start out with visualizing color because we can see the noise. We want to see it first, right? So instead of 3D noise, which gives us a vector, R, G, and B, 3 float values, we want 1D, grayscale. So we're basically saying put one value equally into RGB, and that gives you a grayscale. The other thing I want to do is, let's turn on some alligator noise, and we can remap the noise and make it really stark, very high contrast. And with this, you can activate your ramp and, you know, really have control over that. So let's say you're happy with this. Again, we can animate this. I'm going to put at frame here, offset of Y, and it jumps around. Now again, we're going to just repeat this. And what you'll see a lot is people putting different multipliers. I'm putting the same one, but try to change it up a little bit. So maybe for this one, it'll be 0.02. Okay, so now we've got overlapping noise. Finally, instead of CD, let's say density. Again, we can't see it anymore because it's not color anymore. But what we can do is say scatter, enable the density attribute. And now our distribution of points is controlled by that noise. Now we're ready to go into particles and source our particle system. Tab PopNet. We're about to go into yet another context. So keep your eye on this area here. I'm going to go to frame 1. I'm going to dive inside my PopNet, and now look what it says. It says dynamics. I'm going to press play, And all you really see is the source still. We haven't done anything yet. So let's take a look at this source. This says scatter onto surfaces, but we actually already made our points. So I'm going to say points. Okay, so now we can see that particles are generating, but they're not moving. So we need to give them some forces. Let's go to the birthing tab. So constant, you have two types of particle emission. Constant is a constant rate. It's a certain number of particles per second. Impulse is a certain number of particles per cook, which is like per frame. And I'd like to use the impulse. So we're gonna, activation always means on or off, 0 or 1. I'm gonna say 0 to turn that off. And then impulse, I'm gonna say, okay, I want 50 particles every time Houdini cooks this simulation, which is once per frame. Okay, and feel free to turn that up. It's just to keep this demo nice and fast. The other thing I want to do, which we'll get to in a second, is life expectancy. How long in seconds do we want our particles to live? I'm going to say 10 seconds for that. Okay. So that's all we need to do for now for our emission. Let's get these particles moving. I'm going to bring this up because we're going to add some forces in here. First thing I'm going to do is some pop wind. Give it some velocity. Okay, so let's play this. And we need to give the wind. We're going to actually not give it some velocity, but we're actually going to use the noise. So let's put this up to 1.5. Now we can see the particles moving. If you want to take off the guide, the blue guide, we just go to our pop source and turn that off. So now we can just take a look at our simulation here. Okay. We might also want to use the guide, take a look at the guide of our wind. Okay, so this is the noise. So when I turn that amplitude up, that's what we're seeing here. So I have my amplitude up. The swirl size is actually quite interesting. If I turn my swirl size up, I get much bigger swirls than the noise pattern. The noise pattern becomes much bigger, and that's much more in line with the kind of undulations I'm looking for. The other thing that keeps things smooth is roughness. So what's the opposite of rough? It's smooth, right? So you can turn this guy down too. And you can kind of play with this to get what you want. Okay. Now, in addition to this, I'd be interested in to create like a spinning force. And if you want anything gravitational, you can always just put a value in y to make things go down, make things go up. I'm now going to turn off the guide. And I want something called a pop axis force. I'm going to turn off my pop wind. Now, this is another flag. This is called the bypass flag. Whenever I don't want to see something, I just bypass it with this yellow flag. So with my axis force, what I'm looking for, first of all, I want the center to be more in line with the center of my particle system. And I haven't talked about this yet, but there's a way to link our parameters together. And I should have done this. I've already used 2 in the center for 3 objects so far. So I expect you to do this at home. But what you can do is select that value, copy parameter, paste relative reference. And you can do this anywhere in Houdini. And what happens is it links these 2 parameters together. So if I put a 2 here, there's a 2 down there. And they're always linked. If I put a 3 here, there's a 3 here. It goes both ways. It's a bi-directional link. I want 2, okay? And the other thing I'd like to do is the speed. I want to change the orbit speed to something like 5. Let's take a look at how this looks. You can start to see it spin. And you can also turn this guide on and off. Okay, now let's take the wind, put it back on, and see the 2 forces together. What do we get? Something a little more interesting. And yeah, you could spend hours with forces. If you press tab, pop, you'll see how many forces there are, so many pop nodes. It'll keep you busy for a very long time. Okay, now let's add some color to our simulation. So pop color. If we want to say ramp, we can change the color of this ramp . And what are we going to see? We're going to see that I'm going to move this over here. So we see that this effect happened faster. And now you can start to see it. Over the course of the particle's life, it will change color according to how old it is. So we can see that particles come with a whole bunch of extra attributes. We can see that this says at n age. What is n age? It stands for normalized age. And what is normalized age? Normalized age at n age equals age over life. And these are attributes. So at age over at life. Remember, we said these particles should only live 10 seconds. When a particle is born, its age is 0. When a particle dies, its age is 10. So let's do this calculation. When a particle is born, it's 0, right? But the life is 10. What does this equal? This equals 0. When a particle is about to die, the end of its life, it equals 10. That's the age. Over life, that's 10. What does this equal? 1. So now you can see that we have a normalized age. It's always going to be going from 0 to 1, no matter how high the life is. If it lives to 100, always going to be from 0 to 1. If you divide age by life, that's n age. Houdini already does this for you. So at n age, it knows that's what you want, and it says, okay, the range is going from 0 to 1. And we can put this ramp here. I'm just speeding it up because we have a lot more to go. Okay, and then you can kind of recolor it in real time and just decide on the things you like and don't like. Okay, so let's say that we're okay with our particle system. Let's go back out to our SOPs, which is a geometry. And one of my favorite nodes, we're going to use a node. It's called copy to points. Tab, copy to points. Before we can do this, we need something to copy. So I'm just going to put down a box. And this box is going to have a size, and we'll display this. It's going to have a size in y 0.01. Okay. Let's see what happens when we try to copy that. Whoa, okay. That box is pretty big, right? But you can see the power in what copy to points does. It literally takes any object and copies it to the particles. This is actually pretty cool just on its own, but yeah, okay, we want it smaller, right? Another great node called attribute randomize. Now, by default, we have the color attribute in there, and it's just shuffling up those colors. But I don't really want colors because I have my colors. I want to affect an attribute called p-scale. This stands for point scale, and you can kind of already see it happen. They're now all different sizes. And what we can do is we realize they're way too big still. So we have this handy way of controlling that, the min value and the max value. So the min value, I'm going to say 0.01. The max value, I'll say 0.05. And now they're a lot smaller. Maybe too small. Maybe this should be 0.1, just to show the variation here. Okay, So then let's put down a material. And that was what our last material is for this one. The principal shader. So let's just put that. You can see it kind of did a little brightness boost right there. Now, where did everything else go, right? We had our object that we fractured. We have a little background. And you'll see that there's this icon here, and this is a total gotcha. So I want to magnify this. It's right here. What does this mean? When I'm in one object, I don't want to see the other objects, right? That's a lot of the time. By default, it has it ghosted. And then you can also show all objects, which is, I wouldn't use that in the beginning because it will confuse you. But let's just, put it on the default ghost for now. But then let's just go all the way out and see and look at everything together now. So pretty simple demo, and now let's see how it renders. I already have my lighting set up here. I'm going to go to my render view, hit the render button. And this could take a while. Lots of different rendering engines that you can put into Houdini, but the native one is called Mantra. It does take a little bit of time. You can always just draw a little box around your render view. And then it'll render just that little area and make it a little easier. Now, another context. Let's go to the out context. This is where all your rendering happens. You can see right here, it says outputs at the top right. This is your Mantra ROP, your rendering output. If I press P, this is where all your rendering parameters are, where you can render your image and all kinds of other optimization options that you can use. As soon as you hit render, it automatically puts down this node for you. This is also a good place where you can test out all your lights. So if I want to change the intensity, and you can change the camera view up here as well. And don't forget to stop your render. If you leave that going, it will slow you down. So you can go back to your scene view and see everything again. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Again, I do have a more fully rendered version here. And that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for watching my demo. I do have a little bit of time. I don't know, Caitlin, if you have any questions. I don't think we had any audience questions. It is quite early. But I do hope everybody enjoyed that. And please also, I just wanted to say one more thing for everyone watching. I want to meet you. Okay, so I'm going to put down a font stop for all of you motion designers. I'm going to hide my other objects. And here is my email. Please contact me. I want to hear from you. Right here. So this is how I'm ending my talk. Yeah, so thank you again so much for having me, and I'll be around to answer questions when Victoria shows her performance as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Debra. Just because I am so technologically challenged in ways, so I was just kind of watching, and it's a lot of it went over my head, but my questions are more about your school. Can you talk about your school? Can you talk about how it is run and sort of like
thank
how
you for
you
asking about that. Yeah, it's we're working on the launch. We're very, very close, hoping in the next week or two. If you just go to houdini.school, you can put your email in and you'll be notified. But basically, it's very community oriented, and we have a whole bunch of live teachers because I really value that human, student teacher interaction. I teach this way at Drexel for many years now, and it's incredibly rewarding for both sides. And it's all over Zoom, so it's very interactive, and I can take over your computer if needed. All the classes are about an hour and a half, and all kinds. I mean, the thing also is that it's very teacher focused too. Like, I want to empower my teachers as well. Like, I want them to teach what they're passionate about. And it's just going to be all kinds of areas of Houdini, not just the kind of like destruction and pyro that you see, which is super cool, but all kinds of other aspects too, and a lot of more game and interactive areas as well. The classes will be run live for like a certain amount of time, and then they'll get kind of archived, and you can also join in those go at your own pace type of classes. And there's also going to be clubs, and I've already started one. It's called Houdini Battle. It's quite popular. It's quite competitive. So there's, emotions kind of run high at that one. And we need more girls. So yeah, I'm trying to get more girls. Very hard though. This is I'm happy to be teaching, and at Drexel, there are a lot of girls in my classes, but in the industry, it's rare. It's not as common. And it's just really interesting how Houdini also is going into so many other industries. It's like, it's been in film for like 20, 30 years, but games, it's exploding in games. It's like the last 5 years, it's been exploding in games. Working with Victoria, right? It's in the art world. It's in scientific visualization. And that's how I got into this. Because I was, like 15 years ago, I was trying to do some science visualization, and I discovered Houdini after the project. And because, it's just, yes, the learning curve is a bit steeper, but what happens is you can do more complex things easier. So it's like, it's a bit of an interesting dichotomy there. But
yeah, it's like a big investment at first in a way, but once you sort of get over the mountain of learning, you kind of are in this.
Exactly. And right, because it's like it takes a lot of time to kind of create the system, but once it's created, you can then generate, an infinite amount of variations and iterations, and really create systems and have lots of happy accidents. So it's really rewarding and exciting. And I've seen so many students just kind of like just shoot up like rockets. And learn and then teach me, because I'm really here because I want to learn, right? Yeah. I'm more of a student, so I'm just happy to give back, because I wish I was younger when I learned it. So
yeah,
really my mission is to get them as young as I possibly can, and to inspire and just, you know, just have this kind of community. So
cool.
Yeah.
There's actually some great questions that are in the chat from Elena. So a few things. What's the difference between Touch Designer and Houdini?
So very key question, yeah.
And is Houdini an open source?
It's definitely not open source. It's
Okay.
a private company, and the free version you can learn on, but they have different tiers. Like there's Houdini Indie, which is only a couple $100 a year. And then there's the professional one, which the studios use, and then the free one is for students. So they kind of try to accommodate everybody. But good question, Touch Designer and Houdini, in a nutshell, one is real time and one is not. So Touch is real time, and it's used for projection mapping, mostly VJing, that kind of thing. But what's neat is that at one point, like 30 years ago, they were the same piece of software. And then they split. So they're like cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And starting in Houdini, if you learn Touch, you'll be like, oh gosh, everything looks super familiar. And I'm sure going the other way too. But it's really like sops and chops, which is like these two contexts in Houdini, where it's like all audio and waveforms, mixed with geometry. So yeah, so they're cousins, they play nice, and I think it's pretty easy to learn one once you know the other one.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's it for us now. Thank you so much again for being here, Debra, and for your time and your generosity. Let's see, we can post more about the school on our website. And then are there any other places that we should go to check out what you're doing?
That's pretty much it for now. It's my big thing I'm talking about. I would just also encourage everyone to go to Side Effects and download and check out this website as well. And all the cool art that people are doing. Here's like the gallery, for example. It's just like so much great stuff, and a great community. The people are great. There's so many forums on Discord now. And please contact me. I'm like super friendly, happy to help. And, you know, it's just all fun for me. So really happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Debra.
Great.